slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Jaws is quite possibly one of the most iconic films of its era. A monstrous beast terrorizing a sleepy seaside town and the adventure of the plucky hero setting out to stop it. Cinema gold. Based on a 1974 novel of the same name, the original idea arose from author Peter Benchley's growing interest in shark attacks. Born in New York City in 1940, no doubt he would have been all too aware of the bloody summer of 1916. Around 141 miles of the US East Coast borders the frigid waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Jersey Shore is known for idyllic seaside towns, beaches, and of course, the reality television series. The waters of Jersey Shore are home to dozens of fish species. Although rare, even the largest fish in the world's oceans can sometimes visit the long stretch of New Jersey coastline. Though the whale shark is relatively harmless, its smaller cousins inspire fear in millions, namely the great whites and bull sharks. These two species of elasmobrink are apex predators, preying on a host of other species of fish and rays, dolphins and seals. Sometimes, like in the summer of 1916, contact with humans occurs. Though most shark attacks are non-fatal, the number of yearly deaths sits, on average, around 10. Over a 2-week period, 1st of July through to 12th of July 1916, 5 people would be unfortunate victims of shark attacks. 4 would sadly pass away. These events would grip the nation, spreading fear of the oceans and its predators. Shark hunts were launched to cull shark numbers in the bid to protect the waters, as the attacks on Jersey Shore would seep into American pop culture, no doubt one of many inspirations for Jaws. Beach Haven is a small town located on Long Beach Island, and on the 1st of July would witness the first of these infamous shark attacks in this area. Charles Van Zandt was holidaying in the area during the heatwave of 1916, staying at the Grand Ingleside Hotel. It would be in this hotel that he would breathe his last, bleeding to death from his wounds on the manager's desk. Before dinner, Van Zandt went for a swim with the family dog. Not long after entering the water, other beachgoers would report first hearing Charles shouting. At first, they would think he was calling his dog, but it was actually his cries for help. Unbeknownst to them, a shark was biting at his legs. Eventually, the beach's lifeguard, Alexander Ott, would come to Charles's aid, dragging him to the safety of the beach. Ott would claim that the shark would follow them as close as it could get without beaching itself. The wounds to Van Zandt's legs would be fatal. One report had it that much of the flesh of his left thigh had been stripped away. At around 6:45 p.m. that evening, Charles Van Zandt would be pronounced dead at the Ingleside Hotel. Much like the fictional beach of Amity in Jaws, and in spite of a fatal shark attack, the waters and beaches of New Jersey remained open to the public. Fishermen and charter captains would report sightings of large sharks in the Atlantic waters of Jersey Shore in the next few days, with some as far north as New York City. The incumbent Pennsylvania State Fish Commissioner was quoted as saying at the time, "Despite the death of Charles Van Zandt and the report 2 sharks being caught in the vicinity recently, I do not believe there is any reason why people should hesitate to go in swimming for fear of man-eaters." 5 days after the death of Charles Van Zandt, the second attack would occur. On the 6th of July, some 45 miles north of Beach Haven, Charles Bruder would be swimming some distance from shore. At the time, he was working as the bell captain at the Essex and Sussex Hotel. Alerted by his screaming, a woman would raise the alarm of Charles's distress to the lifeguards. I saw one report that said the woman had thought a canoe with a red hull had capsized. Perhaps she had gotten confused by the blood in the water. Charles Anderson and George White, the lifeguards on duty, would row out to where Bruder's body would be floating. It was then that the grisly scene was observed for the first time. The shark that had attacked him had bitten chunks of flesh from his abdomen and severed both his legs. It seems almost improbable that Charles Bruder had survived the attack long enough to have been rescued, but the lifeguards would report that he was still alive when they reached him, only succumbing to the horrific wounds before they were able to reach the shore. 6 days later, the final 3 attacks would occur on the same day. By looking at a map of the attacks, you would be right in being confused as to how a shark attack could happen so far inland. Matawan Creek would see 2 attacks in the space of an hour. A resident of the town of Matawan, Thomas Cottrell, had reported the sighting of an 8-foot shark in the creek. This report was ignored. Perhaps many of the townsfolk did not believe such a large shark, or any shark, could enter the creek so far from the ocean. In fact, the area around Wyckoff Dock where the next set of attacks would happen, is 1.5 miles from Raritan Bay on the Atlantic coast. In hindsight, it seems like the most prudent thing would have been to have erred on the side of caution and taken Cottrell's report seriously. Little was known about shark behaviour and less about their ecology at the time, so I can see how people thought the sea captain was wrong. 11-year-old Lester Stilwell was one of a group of boys playing and swimming in the creek during the early afternoon of the 12th of July. After seeing what they thought was an old log by Wyckoff Dock, you can imagine the shock and fear that spread through them when a dorsal fin suddenly broke the water's surface. Scrambling to get out from the water, the shark would attack young Lester, pulling him under. The other boys would run into town, shock and adrenaline coursing through their bodies. I can only imagine what stories they were telling anybody they came across. Perhaps some were even able to relay that it had been a shark attack. A group of men, Watson Fisher among them, rushed to the creek to search for the missing boy, believing he had suffered a seizure whilst in the water. Fisher would be the one to find Stilwell's body. However, whether it was the scent of blood in the water or the men's frantic splashing during their search, the shark would attack Fisher. During this fight for his life, Fisher would lose Stilwell's body. Much like Van Zandt, Fisher's leg would be badly bitten, and despite winning himself free from the shark, he would die from blood loss in Monmouth Memorial Hospital at 5:30 p.m. Lester Stilwell's body would be found 2 days later upstream from Wyckoff Dock. Half an hour later, and half a mile from this area of the creek, the final attack would play out. Another boy, 14-year-old Joseph Dunn, would be bitten on his left leg, severely damaging it. Thankfully for him, his brother and some friends were nearby and able to pull him from the shark's jaws. Dunn would survive his attack, the only one of the 5 to do so, and would leave hospital over 2 months later. Retelling his attack in a newspaper and to the press, he said he could feel his leg going down the shark's throat and believed he might have been swallowed whole had he not been saved. Even in 2025, a spate of shark attacks would make national news, if not global. Dozens of reporters and newspapers flooded New Jersey as the United States reeled in the growing fear of the open sea and what predators would lurk beneath the surf. Van Zandt's death had been believed and reported as a freak accident. In the wake of the second attack on Bruder, coverage exploded. The death would make front-page news on the country's biggest newspapers, with one leading with "Shark Kills Bather Off Jersey Beach." Many towns and resorts would try desperately to keep their beaches safe from sharks to prevent a huge drop in business, netting off sections of water to prevent any further attacks. On the 8th of July, a press conference of scientists from the Natural History Museum called for calm and suggested any further attacks were unlikely. The only real expert in the subject matter, ichthyologist John Nichols, advised those still brave enough to enter the water should stay close to shore and remain within the netted areas of public beaches. As you can imagine, with panic sweeping through the communities along Jersey Shore, shark sightings skyrocketed. On the same day as the press conference, an armed motorboat reportedly chased after an animal they believed to have been a shark. Benjamin Everingham, a lifeguard at Ashbury Avenue Beach, fought off what he claimed was a 12-foot shark with an oar. With sightings spreading north and south along the Atlantic coast, from New York to Alabama, and the nation gripped in fear of the sea, President Woodrow Wilson scheduled a meeting of his cabinet to address the growing concern of public safety. Eventually, large-scale shark hunts would comb the coastline of New Jersey and New York, capturing and killing hundreds of sharks. Perhaps they had even managed to take the shark, or sharks, responsible for the fatal attacks. The species of the shark responsible is unknown, though it is believed to have been a great white or bull shark. There is even some doubt either species was the shark that had inflicted the fatal wounds on Charles Van Zandt. James Meehan, the commissioner from earlier, believes the shark that had attacked Van Zandt was small, had managed to get marooned in shallow waters after high tide, and hungry tried to attack the dog Van Zandt was playing with. Instead, the shark had taken chunks of flesh from a human. It seems plausible, of course. However, witnesses to that attack claim the animal was 9 feet in length. One witness claimed it was a Spanish shark, a common name for sand tiger sharks. As you might imagine, many sharks purported to have been the Jersey man-eater were caught by fishermen and hunters. A blue shark was caught on 14th of July, whilst a few days later, Thomas Cottrell, the very same of Matawan, claimed to have caught a sandbar shark. Both species can certainly get large enough to have potentially become man-eaters, and both are common enough sights in the waters of the Western Atlantic. One outlandish theory claims the attack on Bruder was the work of a sea turtle. The seriousness of this claim I was not able to verify. Michael Schleiser, a taxidermist, caught a great white shark 2 days after the final attacks. He caught the animal in Raritan Bay at the mouth of Matawan Creek, and the shark was measured to be 7.5 foot in length and weighed 325 pounds. The shark was reportedly ferocious and nearly sacked Schleiser's boat before he managed to kill it. Curiously, after opening the shark's stomach, he described fleshy material and bones which scientists would label as human. Was this the man-eater prowling the waters of New Jersey? Possibly. There were no attacks after this predator was caught. The only other species of shark believed to have been involved is the bull shark. Able to leave ocean water for brackish and even fresh water, this species of shark is believed to have been responsible for some attacks, notably those in Matawan Creek. To further this idea, bull shark attacks are common in rivers and streams across the globe. Great whites are more thought of as an ocean species, and to be found in a tidal creek would be unusual. So, perhaps we have two sharks, or at least species, responsible for the attacks. Van Sant and Bruder, the unlucky victims of a great white, and the attacks in Matawan were by the jaws of a bull shark. However, Matawan Creek is a deep body of water, and its salinity more closely resembles an ocean environment. Ichthyologist George Burgess believes the white shark caught by Schleiser to be the man-eater, stating in an interview, "Since an appropriately sized white shark with human remains in its stomach was captured shortly after the attacks, and no further instances occurred, it seems likely this was the shark involved in at least the Matawan casualties." The temporal and geographical sequence of the incidents also suggests the earlier attacks may have involved the same shark. Whether on holiday or attempting to avoid the heat, 5 people would get into the waters of the Jersey Shore in July 1916, and only one would survive their meeting with the real-life inspiration for Jaws. That bloody summer would entwine itself in American history and culture, and would even lead to the expansion of the field of study around sharks. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Was it a lone, rogue, great white, perhaps a bull shark? Maybe each attack was the result of different individual sharks and species. We may never know for certain which shark species were involved during those 12 days of July, but be sure to scan the horizon for dorsal fins the next time you're treading the waters of the unknown.